Thank you, Thorsten. Exciting stuff and really insightful. I had some good text coming through while I was watching you. So now we have a bit of time for Q&A. In fact, we have no time for Q&A left, but it's we have and so maybe have one or two questions. Sorry, Jacob.
Jacob Bluestone from Credit Suisse. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting. To what extent do you think some of these things that you're doing are scalable more widely across DT? So, for example, what you described on changing the incentive structure, are some of these things something you could spread more widely across the group rather than just on sort of smaller portfolios of assets?
I think we already had that since 2011, 2012 on a different scale. We were discussing that equity ownership, that ownership of shares is something that we really should demonstrate to the outside market. So we're already focusing on this since a long time. And then on top of it, we have these special cases. The reason why the US is working so wonderful is because you have alignment of interest between managers and shareholders, us being one part of it. But sometimes you have very specific cases that you want to take out. I don't think that this is a role model for all our assets. I'd love that our assets, like in Europe, where Srini is obviously peaking and doing copy and paste to a certain extent, are moving more into this direction, that you have situations where, which we had in the past, someone is making a huge investment, it fails, you write it off, and then the only consequence out of it that you get a 3-year paycheck for not delivering. This is going to change because you have, in capital allocation, what I'm dealing with, and most of the time, is that you have people that are 1,000% convinced that this is the right to invest. This changes a little bit if you say, put your money where your mouth is. Keval Patel is kind of chasing a lot, some managers right now. I read this with interest of saying, when is he finally buying shares? I can tell you also for myself, if I look at Tim, he said the first thing to me is, Thorsten, I want you being tied with your compensation to your assets. And I can tell you what, more than 50% of my compensation is tied to the success or non-success of Temu US. Of course, I got it right, and I'm very happy about that. Now he complains that he pays me that money, but it's, to cut a long story short, selective cases, private equity model, it's not group-wide, but equity ownership, keep a share, keep skin in the game is important to us.
There's another happy guy, it's Keval. You know, he's get all this advertising today.
Yeah, that's right.
Akhil?
Yeah, hi, Thorsten. Two things. Firstly, on towers, as you said, a very interesting space at the moment across the industry. I guess two things I want to understand on towers. Firstly, a lot of tower companies are now moving more into the active elements of the network with small cells and fiber. How do you think about that? Do you think there's any sort of trade-off for your business and I guess the risk or opportunity for DT groups? So how do you think about that? In the same way, the opportunity of adding co-locations on your towers, and whether you think about the risk of what that could or couldn't mean for DT in terms of your competition getting a stronger footprint. So just how do you think about these various things? And then when we move to Holland, as you said, a tough market and quite a convergent market at the moment. Can you just walk us through what you think, assuming this deal were to complete, how just broadly you think about your ability to leverage opportunities in convergence going forward?
Okay, very smart questions, I have to say. So the first one is the one I cannot answer, Akhil. That's the reason why I said I'm studying the tower sector. I'm trying to get in touch with the companies that knows it best and want to learn. I listen to Dirk, what is important to Dirk and Walter on their kind of defending its network leadership and trying to figure out how do we, number one, make sure that people understand this is not a 6 billion asset, this is much more than that, highlighting the value of it. And then I think over the next 18 months, you should ask me that question again. It's certainly a difference of if you own a tower portfolio in a company where, in a country where you're the leader, or if you own a tower network in a country where you are just mobile only and may say that in the long run, this may not be part of our portfolio. So you may be sometimes more opportunistic than others. In terms of Holland and your question of convergence, yeah, we hopefully for the first time, and I think we should observe this very closely all together, is how is the EU, how is the EC looking at this transaction? We have the first readout in next week, which is listening only. I just hope that the EC moves away from this very rigid stance that they have on mobile to mobile consolidation, which to a certain extent has caused us as an industry to see multiple degradation. I think this is the perfect case for saying this should be approved, given the market in itself. And second, I hope that they also do recognize that they have been part of the problem, allowing VodafoneZiggo creating a market structure where 90% of EBITDA is with two parties, and at the same time they expect from the mavericks in this market to be competitive for the next 5 to 10 years. How should we build the scale, and how should we compete if the fixed line prices are increasing over 6 months and we are sitting on a mobile asset and they create private markets? So there needs to be a kind of balance, and I will be much smarter in hopefully 6-9 months of this deal being approved. And one part of it that we are pushing for is obviously beyond TUIs that we acquired from VodafoneZiggo, getting better wholesale access, whether that's cable or copper.
Okay, thank you, Thorsten. Fabulous. Well,
thank you, Hannes.
Okay, so while we are enjoying the legends, next one is